Hello, this is Malorian. This is the Orc Tactical Team, and actually right now I'm a little bit pissed off. This was supposed to be a Malorian live. I was going to be doing with Chris, who is going to be my first round opponent. We're going to be talking about our lists, predictions, Tomb Kings, blah, blah, blah. I just can't get Google Plus Hangout to work out. I think the issue is the fact that I'm so far north, and hopefully this is a short-term thing, because I would really hate it if I can't do these Google Hangouts anymore. But either way, I'm going to be doing now this as an Orc Tactical Team. And what we're going to be talking about is now Tomb Kings in the current meta. So, how do you see them in tournaments nowadays, and how do you see them in your friendly games? And just kind of recap where we are right now in 8th, as we've seen Orcs and Goblins, we've seen Tomb Kings, Ogre Kingdoms, Empire, Warriors of Chaos, now Demons of Chaos, so quite a good amount of 8th edition books. And just where in this is the Tomb Kings fitting in, and how do they actually do tournaments when they're trying to be competitive? And I guess the very first simple test you can really go through is how often do you really see them in tournaments? I mean, guaranteed, when you're going to tournaments, you're going to see Orcs and Goblins, you're going to see Empire, you're going to see the Ogre Kingdoms, Warriors of Chaos, definitely now, Demons, maybe type thing. And Tomb Kings, same thing. Well, maybe. It's not really a big thing where people are taking Tomb Kings to go and just dominate at a tournament or anything like that. And I think the real reason why they kind of suffer right now is they actually pay the vampire counts tax. And there's another one, vampire counts, that also came out. And what that's all about is the whole idea that there is very good things in the book, but it's not really even there in your core. And you're kind of forced to take this crappy core that's then there to kind of be forcefully used to try and support the stuff that's actually good. So what that's really all based around is the fact that vampire counts and Tomb Kings are mainly based around really crappy units such as the skeletons and the ghouls and stuff like that. And of course there's no ghouls in Tomb Kings, but it's the whole thing where you got these guys that are weapon skill 2, toughness 3, strength 3, garbage armor, and they're really not doing anything for you. Now, the nice thing is in vampire counts, you can be boosting this up with, killy vampires and all this stuff. In Tomb Kings, not so much, right? We don't have the blender Tomb King or anything like that. There's good builds out there, but they're more situational. And we're going to be talking about that stuff in a second. Now, one of the things that kind of helps counter this tax, in a way, is the fact that as opposed to vampire counts, you can give your Tomb Kings bows. And this gives you a now different tactical option. And that's something you'll actually see now that for the people that are trying to take a very competitive Tomb King army, that's really what a lot of their core points are going into, is just a massive block of archers. In fact, some of them even go farther than that and say, like, just tons and tons of archers, and pew, 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 pew. The fact that I'm hitting on a set amount all the time, and I can buff these things and debuff you and blah, 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 blah. You can make this shooting actually fairly powerful and do actually okay. Of course, at the end of the day, this is just shooting and archers, and even though, yes, they can't stand and shoot, and once you tie them up in combat, they're kind of done. At least, at range, they can do some pretty good damage. Of course, if they're all, if they got a steam tank coming at them, they're kind of pretty much screwed, but hey, there you go. Another thing they can kind of go with that some other people are really trying and push is the whole chariot spam. Because, the cool thing about them is they can take their chariots as core, and as opposed to their last book, they don't have light chariots anymore. They actually have regular chariots that do D6 impact hits instead of D3 and all this silly stuff. So you can actually take them, take a whole bunch of them. You can even go and take and build your lord on there so that he has the whole item where the people within 6 can't use the general, can't use the BSB reroll, and really just kind of like smash in there and know that if you're hitting a big unit of night goblins, they're probably going to break because, sure, you're steadfast, but it's only on steadfast 5. And so you can really get these big things where, okay, I got 12 chariots, bam, I hit you, a whole bunch of impact hits, and then, okay, you break and I run you down. The real problem, though, even with that, is the whole idea that obviously chariots have a real weakness, and it's pretty easy to get around. Chariots only work on the charge. When chariots don't charge, they're dying pretty much. Unless we're talking about like a corn chariot or something like that, they're in big trouble. And so really all you need to do is go over there and redirect them with something. I mean, if they're just going to sit there, of course, War Machine's just going to tear up those big units of chariots. So they're kind of forced to dedicate. They can't flee because they're immune to psych. So it can be... It's a really good thing you can use against new players or people that don't have a lot of chaff, but against an experienced opponent with lots or an average amount of chaff, it's not going to do that well. And so really what you're looking at when we're talking about these things here is that we had crappy skeletons, which are at least cheap, but they're not doing anything for you except for maybe giving you ranks while you're trying to beat them with something else. You got archers, which you can try and go for the shooty skew if you're up against something slow and squishy. That can work out for you. Or you can go for the whole chariot skew if you can catch somebody without any chaff, or especially if they're a low leadership. Now, another way that they can try and make that core work for them is go for the whole leadership skew. And so, of course, there's different things you can do there to make it so that the leadership tests are all going crazy and you're trying to make them fail their fear tests and blah, 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 blah. But again, this is kind of a very dangerous skew to be going for, because if you ever go against one of the immune to psych armies, it's completely wasted. So it's always one of those things that's very dangerous to do. And yeah, it's it's looking at all their things. I mean, it's just, that's why I call it the core attacks, because no matter which way you really go, you're really putting yourself out there. Now, they do have some very crazy good things, and probably one of the first things to touch on is their monsters. So they have access to a whole bunch of monsters that they can get, and especially with the way that they can heal, they can really be healing up all these monsters very easily. And that's what I found when I was actually running my Tomb King army, is that I was finding that the next thing that was actually working was just taking a whole bunch of Sphinxes and just going and crushing everything in my path. Like I said, you have them in special, they're not that expensive, they're easy to heal, toughness 8 is fantastic, as long as you're not facing a lot of attacks. But then again, of course, now the meta is changing right now, so I don't even know if that one... It's still good, but the fact that everybody's starting to load up on war machines and cannons to deal with warriors of chaos, it doesn't matter if you're toughness 6 or toughness 8, a strength 10 cannon is just going to plow through you. And, whereas a Chimera has a regen, Sphinxes have nothing unless you take the special character, and then he has a 6+. Woo. But, yeah, so even there, you're kind of suffering a little bit. And then, of course, they have some of their kind of like fun units. You have your whole little surfer snakes. They can kind of do okay, but I mean, compared to some of the other monstrous infantry, they just really aren't there. Oh, sorry, monstrous cav. So really what it comes down to, when you want to be very competitive with Tomb Kings, is you have to be taking advantage of their magic skew. And there's a couple of different components in there, and that's because there's a lot of different synergies within the actual book to be helping magic, so that once you have it all there, you can be pretty damn scary. And I'd say the very first part there is going to be having to take the casket. And what the casket does for you is, I mean, not only is it a pretty good kind of balance spell and always nice thing to have, is just the fact that it just gives you power dice. There's so few things down in the game that just give you power dice, especially in the new books. It's just almost non-existent. That for this thing, like, okay, I take this and it gives me power dice? Fantastic. That's great. That's obviously going to help out your magic phase. The next one is taking the Hero Titan. What he does for you is, I mean, whenever you're casting your spells, it just makes them stronger. And so having that there again, of course, is giving you that synergy. He also has his own bounce spell whenever you need it. So, I mean, already you have two things there which are giving you more power dice, making them so that they're a higher level, and then giving you two bounce spells that, I mean, even if you never use them, it's the whole fact that it's a toolbox for whenever you want to use them. Then we get on to one of the special characters that actually makes this work out very well, and that's Arcan the Black. Now, what he is he's kind of like a Tomb King and a priest all wrapped in together into one. He works out to be a level 5, which is fantastic, and he's also has the Lore of Death, which can be amazing. Of course, one of the best ways you can make your crappy troops actually start perform better is to be by using that lore of death to just kill off their characters, really. I mean, if they don't have, if you're against warriors and you kill off their warrior priest, all of a sudden, yeah, Empire, all of a sudden they're a lot less scary, right? If you're up against orcs and goblins or Skaven or whatever, a low leadership army, right? You go and you kill off their general, well, all of a sudden those fear tests are happening more and more. So it's very huge that you have access to this, and it can be extremely deadly. Now, the other nice thing is he also has an item that lets you transfer over dice from the dispel dice to the power dice. And so what you're seeing there is you have extra dice from the casket, you have the hero titan helping you out, and then you have the dice you transferred over from your dispel dice to becoming more power dice. And now you get this ton of dice. You have all these different options of things you can be casting, and that's really where you can get a lot of your strengths going. Now, of course, the bad thing about all this is the whole thing where, you know, magic is unreliable. Even though you're getting extra dice, you always have the times you roll very little dice, and your extras could not be there. The assumption from Arcane the Black is the whole idea that, well, okay, you have dispel dice, which are going to power dice, but you have to actually have extra dispel dice to do that. So that means you either have to be against somebody that you just say, like, okay, their magic isn't that important, I can take the hits, not stop these things, and then save my dice, or just really just say, like, know what, it is going to hurt me, but I'm going to hurt you more than you hurt me. So it is something like that there, where it is kind of situational, but then again, on average dice, you really have it there. And when you look around at their other competitive builds, like we talked about, like the ton of archers, or going for the ton of chariots or the ton of monsters, really the hard set counters are there for all the other things. I mean, like I said, you're going to be seeing the stuff with a 1+ armor, which means those archers, it's not going to do well in the current meta. You're going to start seeing lots of chaff. I mean, so at least around here in all the battle reports I've been seeing, chaff has been making a comeback. So the whole idea of the chariots, combined with the fact that you're seeing more war machines, the chariot spam isn't working. So then you have the monsters. Again, you're seeing the war machine spam starting to come back up, and so the monsters aren't going to do so well. And so really all that leaves you with is magic. There's nothing really there that's going to be shutting you down. The only last one that you might have to worry about if you do that skew is going up against dwarves, because of course with them they could be getting 12 dispel dice every single turn if they want. But realistically, you don't see those things in tournaments, and you should be okay. You always do have your Skull Pulse, where you can be shooting skulls at things, causing panic tests, kind of like with the whole Hell Cannon for the Warriors of Chaos. However, it's nice and cheaper, and it's pretty nice too that you don't have to worry about the crazy, misfires. It can be hurting your own guys and all this stuff. And these cheap things here as well can be taking out those enemy war machines, the things that would be causing you trouble, shooting for the flanks to be causing panic tests. Yes, again, if you're up against something that's immune to psych, then it's kind of useless. But there you really have it. So that's where Tomb King's kind of fallen right now. You don't see them very often because a lot of their power builds aren't really working very well with the current meta. But hey, things can change. They can turn them around. And especially in this first game, I mean, even though I just kind of described Tomb Kings as kind of like below the regular bar and the average, I'm very worried about my first game, because all it takes is for that Arcane the Black because he's using it, that guy in my first game, to kill off my general, and poof, my entire game just falls apart. You already saw it against the Skaven. As soon as my general dies, it's bad news for me. So there you have it. Post down any other comments you have about how Tomb Kings are doing right now in the current meta. And yeah, we'll see you soon at Brawler Bash. See you later. Bye.